welcome to Amphibians Part 2. Glad you could join me. Hopefully you watch Part 1. It's pretty important that you watch Part 1. If you're here watching Part 2, go back and watch Part 1 first, okay? Well, today I'm joined by my mammal friends, but I don't know where my amphibian friends went to, so I guess we're just gonna have to rely on some pictures over here of our amphibians. I brought with me today the spotted salamander, such a cool amphibian, and I also have down here my personal favorite amphibian, the poison dart frog. Oh my gosh, you guys, I am so sorry. Every time we're trying to get something done, there's always somebody at my door. Let's go see who it is. Finn wants to know. So sorry, guys. Oh, Finn's interested. Oh, there they are. Finn. Oh, Froggy's here. Oh, Froggy came to hang out with us today. Come on, Finny. Let's see who else. Who else do we? Oh. Our poison dart frog Dahlia is here. And here's Franklin. Ah, awesome, guys. So glad you're here. I was worried about you. Hey, Finn, come on in. Come on in. Finn, would you mind getting Finn?
Oh, he made it.
Oh, he made it. All right. Well, I'm so glad these amphibian friends could join us today. Like I said, this is Froggy. Here is Franklin. And here's Dahlia. And you know how much I love Dahlia because she is a poison dart frog, and that is my favorite amphibian. So you guys can sit over here with the mammals. Stay out of trouble. Don't cause any problems over here with your friends. They get along all right. So glad you guys could come. I was so worried about you. All right, so what we're going to do today really quickly, guys, is go ahead and today we're going to compare and contrast amphibians and reptiles. If you remember last week, we were comparing and contrasting mammals and reptiles. So today I wanted to switch it up a little bit since we've introduced amphibians as our new animal classification. So let's see what they have in common. That means we're going to compare. We're going to find the things that are similar in each of these groups. And then I also want to contrast, find things that are different about them. And maybe there aren't any similarities, but let's take a look. Let me grab my marker. So here we have our amphibian characteristics, right? These are things that describe amphibians, and on this side is our reptile list. So let's go through each one really quickly and see what these guys have in common and what is different. Let's see, under amphibians, we know, if you watched part 1, that amphibians are vertebrates, which means they have a backbone. Let's look over here at reptiles. Do you remember? Yep, definitely. They are vertebrates also. So that's something they have in common. And if you remember, in a Venn diagram, we put shared characteristics or things that are similar in this shared space. You can see how it overlaps. So we're going to put vertebrates in the shared space because both amphibians and reptiles have backbones. Pretty cool, just like mammals. So let's look at our next characteristics. Amphibians lay eggs. Reptiles, if we remember correctly, they're born from eggs, so the mamas lay eggs. So they both lay eggs. So we're going to put that in the shared space. But if you remember from part 1, their eggs are very different. Amphibian eggs are in the water. They're surrounded by a gelatinous form, and reptile eggs are more leathery and smooth, and reptiles lay their eggs on land. So they are both egg layers, I guess you could say, but the form of their eggs and the feel of their eggs is very, very different. Okay? So let's look. Amphibians are cold-blooded, and I don't even think you guys have to come over to this list. You should remember that reptiles are cold-blooded also. So they definitely have that in common. Wow. Amphibians and reptiles, they have a lot in common. Now, if you remember, mammals wouldn't be in this shared space because mammals are warm-blooded. All right, let's go down to how their skin might look or feel. So an amphibian's skin is smooth, it's moist or wet, and when you touch it, that's how it would feel. Probably a little slimy also, because they do have a mucus covering on their skin. If you come over to the reptile category and the characteristics, their skin is dry and scaly. So that's something they definitely don't have in common. So I'm going to put for the amphibians, skin, sorry guys, you know my handwriting, is wet and smooth. And a reptile's body covering, dry and scaly. Okay. So their skin covering is definitely something that's different or contrasting about them. All right, now let's take a look at how they breathe. It's so interesting because if you've watched part 1, you know amphibians go through metamorphosis, and we'll go over that vocabulary word again. But when they're born, most of them are born in the water, and they're breathing through gills, and they can also breathe through their skin. Now reptiles, they breathe with their lungs just like humans do, right? So they have something in common as they get older, but when they're born, they actually are breathing through a different form. So we're going to put that they can both breathe through lungs. Sorry. Finn must see a squirrel or some other mammal running by. You never know. Finny, come over here. So breathe through the gills. Oh, there's somebody turning around in our driveway. Finn does not like that. He'll be done in a minute. It might be actually. Oh, somebody's backing in to pick something up. We're just gonna have to deal with that. Okay. So we've got they'll breathe. Sorry guys. Through gills and also their skin. So cool. It'd be so neat if we could do that, wouldn't it? And then we're going to say lungs over here as something separate. But as they get older, they do share that characteristic, okay? The next thing is they live on land and water. And we also know that reptiles live on land and water. The difference is amphibians are born in the water typically, and then they spend their later part of their life on land, whereas reptiles, they actually are born on land, and then they move between the water and land. So my niece is here just picking some stuff up. So that's actually something they have in common. Land and water. They just do it at different times in their lives, okay? And then the last thing I have written here is that amphibians eat meat, which means they're what? Carnivores, right. If they eat meat, they're labeled as a carnivore. So amphibians we know eat bugs, other amphibians, and reptiles we also know eat meat. So that's something they have in common. I'm actually going to use the word carnivore right up here. Amphibians and reptiles are both carnivores. So let's review really quickly what they have in common. Amphibians and reptiles are carnivores, they're vertebrates, they lay eggs, although the eggs are very different in how they look and feel. They're cold-blooded, they do breathe through lungs, and they can live on land and water. So they actually have quite a few similarities, but they also have enough differences to put them in a different classification group. Finn's going crazy right now. All right, guys, to wrap things up today, here are a few of the vocabulary words that I want you to try to remember. Metamorphosis is, which I spelled wrong. I'm going to add an IS on the end. Sorry about that. Metamorphosis is the change that an amphibian or an insect goes through to get to their adult form. So an amphibian, for example, when it's born from the egg, when it's hatched from its egg, it looks very different than it does as an adult. Where when mammals are born, they're just little tiny versions of the bigger form. Okay, but amphibians and insects go through a major change, how they look and what body parts they have. The next vocabulary word is gills. And those are organs that allow an animal to breathe underwater. So amphibians have gills after they're born, and we'll learn that fish do too. Extinct, to no longer exist. This is a word we've heard and used before, but there are certain amphibians that are now extinct due to the fact that their habitat is being encroached upon. And then the last word is carnivore, which we just reviewed, and that is an animal that eats meat. And it's here because amphibians are carnivores. All right, guys, that's it for amphibians part 2. Hope you learned some cool facts today. See you next time.